The following podcast may contain adult language and conversations revolving around situations not suitable for immature audiences. Spoilers and general political incorrectness can often be expected, so listener discretion is advised.
They must be destroyed on sight!
Okay, welcome to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, a movie podcast, and I'm your host, Lee Russell, and I'm back with my co-hosts, the Terrible Twosome. I'm with Daniel. How you doing, sir?
Doing all right. How are you?
Good. I'm with Paul. How are you doing, sir? Your mic is much better this week. Awesome.
Thank you. Well, I got my truck back, so I got my regular microphone.
Awesome.
It's coupled together with electrical tape, but it works.
Yeah. Right on. And we're back. We're going to be going into the second part of our slasher movie series for August. We're going to get to two movies here very, very soon. But we're going to take care of some housekeeping and some business here first. I think we'll just jump right into the one comment we got last week. And my God, it's a fucking doozy. It's from Greg Bylog there, Paul.
Greg. It's got to be Greg.
He said, didn't get a chance to post last week, so here's a small essay of my random thoughts on both films to make up for my bad behavior. He said, you guys are right. Prowler is technically better in just about every way. Story, effects, acting, etc. are all better, yet for some reason I enjoyed Madman more. He said, I suppose the forest setting is more interesting to me than the more urban setting in the Prowler. It also helped that the movie was based on an urban legend, which always seems to be more scarier. He said he also likes the killer quite a bit more, and I really enjoyed how they actually showed him quite a bit in the early parts of the film, whereas most slashers, not including the sequels, tend to keep the killer hidden until towards the end. He says, the way they started out with a campfire story and a very catchy song was really creative. It reminds me of Friday the 13th Part 2, which came out almost a year earlier, and to a lesser extent, the opening of Friday the 13th Part 7. It also certainly interesting how they gave you a preview of the kills that hadn't yet happened. I still think the scene where they're leaving the campfire and Madman Mars is watching them from the tree has to be one of the creepiest scenes in any movie ever. I gotta agree with that.
I agree. Yeah, I mentioned that too. I love him in the tree line. I do love that.
Yeah. He says, one criticism I have is the film's misuse of Galen Ross. In Dawn of the Dead, she was one of the genre's all-time strongest female characters. In this, she's basically a typical screaming last girl, and while the quick boob shot is appreciated, I can't help but think her acting talents could have been put to better use. Also, is it just me, or does she look quite a bit younger than she did in Dawn of the Dead, which came out 4 years earlier?
Yeah, she looks a lot less stressed. I mean, they might have done that on purpose in Dawn of the Dead to make her look very stressed out and whatnot. I mean, she's chain smoking the whole damn time and stuff. Maybe a deliberate or accidental misuse of characters' potential.
Yeah. He says, when I was young, we often did go to a drive-in that was surrounded by forest. I can imagine seeing this as a young kid in that setting. Shit, I wouldn't have slept for weeks. As for the Prowler, the thing that impressed me the most was the special effects. I didn't realize they were done by Tom Savini until after I watched it. Really great stuff, especially the early bedroom and bathroom kills. Otherwise, it was a technically sound movie that just didn't keep my interest nearly as much as it should have. It reminded me of My Bloody Valentine, which, from my memory at least, is a stronger movie in his own opinion. I didn't like how the story seemed to have all sort of red herrings and random characters, almost as if the movie script was supposed to be a lot more complicated, and then they ran out of money halfway through filming. The nudity in both films was certainly nice, but not among the best in the genre. And finally, I'm happy to hear you'll be covering The Burning. I saw this fairly recently for the first time, and is really a lost gem. I can't believe that I overlooked it for so long. And he says, "Cheers, guys."
Yeah, that's the same kind of aspect you go on most of these films that we've been covering. When you finally find these films, you're like, where were you my whole life? So I mean, that's definitely they're all films to be appreciated in certain extents by people who love the genre.
Yeah. Any thoughts from you, Daniel, on anything you had to say?
I was going to bring up the thing with what's her name from Dawn of the Dead. Sorry,
Galen Ross.
Yeah, Galen Ross. Yes, I was going to bring that up on the episode and then just was thinking of other things and it slipped my mind, so I didn't bring it up. But yeah, no, I agree that I follow along with that comment fairly well. I don't have any issues with it one way or the other. But I am glad he brought up the fact that actress could have been better used versus the way she was actually used. So that's all we got to say to that.
It's true. Like I think I mentioned that. Like I think she was still like noticeably the best actress in that film. It's just that she had nothing to work with. Like they really didn't give her anything. That was the bit.
Lucci was amazing.
Yeah. All right, so we got through that. Thank you very much, Greg, for that comment. Very well thought out, and we always appreciate anything you have to say. Anyone else who wants to send us comments, of course, you can put comments under this if you're watching it on the YouTube, or you can send an email to me, hoglyreviews@gmail.com. That's HOUGLY reviews at gmail.com, or you can go to our Podbean site, tmddos.podbean.com, and leave comments under the actual posts, and we'll read every comment and respond to every comment. So,
half lit, didn't watch the movies. Let's do a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. So, anyone has any movies they want to mention first that they might have watched this week, and then we can get right on to the reviews.
Nothing from me.
Nothing from you, Daniel?
I have one. I bought and watched The World's End, or rewatched The World's End.
That means I like it.
Great film. I think we are going to discuss this on the podcast at some point in the not too distant future, so I won't go too far, but very potent metaphor for alcoholism and just an overall brilliant film. So
I didn't get that. I don't know. I understand.
Watch it sober.
All I got is the O Crumbs chick is so cute. I just want to marry her right now. P.S. If my wife's watching, I didn't say that. But yeah, that's a brilliant film. Brilliant film.
My wife would probably share her with me if that was an option. So there's always that.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, crumbs. I just thought of Danger Mouse the whole time, just because Penfield from Danger Mouse used to say "Oh crumbs," but I don't know if you ever watched Danger Mouse.
No, never did.
Not since I was a kid.
Yeah.
All right. The only thing I saw was movie from the 70s called Prophecy, which is like an echo horror.
Are you talking about the mutated bears?
Yeah, the mutant bear. Yeah,
I love that film. So shit.
It's a film with a lot of big ideas and a lot of sort of really preachy eco friendly kind of stuff and anti-racism stuff, but it all sort of just takes a fucking nosedive with the second half of the film, where you just all of a sudden see this big mutant bear costume, which, depending on which scene it's in, sometimes it looks really great. Yeah. Sometimes it looks like a guy in a rubber suit, and it looks like
basically a giant chemical burnt bear.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people back in the day, they were getting I don't know, it wasn't really released at the same time, but they were getting the film Grizzly confused with Prophecy.
Yeah,
so
I can see it.
Yeah, the Grizzly's an actual grizzly, and then Prophecy's the mutated, severely burnt bear.
Yeah. It's actually a lot of fun though. Like it just descends into this like geek show, fucking freaky, bloody mess. But it's a really entertaining one at that. It's actually a pretty good film. I just revisited it I haven't seen it for like 20 years, and then I rewatched it on, I think, Put Locker like last week, and yeah, I still like it a lot. It's one Stephen King, if you ever read his book, Dance Macabre, he lists that as like one of his favorite films of that year, whenever it was like 79 or something like that. It's not a great film, like it's a pretty cynical, nasty film in a lot of ways, because it's showing like kids being brutally murdered and stuff by this mutant bear.
In their sleeping bags.
Yeah. But then again, Stephen King at that point was a cynical alcoholic, so he probably was enjoying it.
It all blends together. I don't really have much on part of watching. I've just been H.P. Lovecrafting it lately with audiobooks, so I don't have a lot to go. I mean, same kind of concept. I mean, if you guys like horror and craziness. But I did do a little jint today to my local video store. I picked up Burying My Ex, which is a new film by Joe Dante.
Oh, yeah, I
picked that up today for the wife to watch while I'm over here just screwing around. Maybe I hope it doesn't give her any kind of nuances or anything for my later period. But and I picked up some old films for me to enjoy: Faceless, After Midnight, and I'm trying to remember the other one because I just picked it. Oh, New Year's Evil.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Apparently, I've rented all of them before, but I get so busy over the weekend. Is a lot of times I rent stuff, don't watch it, and take it back,
Yeah,
and then rent it again. So
just to support the local shop, yeah.
as long as it's giving him money, I'm happy.
Awesome. Without further ado, I think we can jump right into the reviews, and I think we will start with...
I think this is the first time Daniel's ever seen me with a beer in my hand.
This is the first time I've ever seen you.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there you
Cheers,
go, yeah.
Daniel.
Yeah, and boy, is he horrified. We'll start with Sleepaway Camp from 1983.
Dear Mom and Dad, I've been at a sleepaway camp for almost 3 weeks, and I'm getting very scared.
Welcome to Sleepaway Camp. Someone is watching you.
Hey, Mama, Reba!
Someone is waiting for you. Someone wants to scare you to death. Sleepaway Camp. You won't be coming home.
Written and directed by Robert Hiltzik, starring Felicia Rose, Jonathan Tiersten, Karen Fields, Christopher Collette, Mike Kellen, Catherine Kami, Paul D'Angelo, Thomas E. Vandell, Louis Salahane, John E. Dunn, Willie Cuskin, and Desiree Gold. Actually, if you want, Paul, I'll let you do the introduction to this film if you feel like it, if you feel up to it.
Well, like I said, I haven't watched it in quite a while. I'm sorry about that. But that seems to be the nuance with me, is not watching the films, is just briefly going over what I remember. So I made a little, just write down a little list of stuff that I remember. Of course, it's a camp of kids, and they go on in the beginning of the film. From what I remember, is they do a little a flashback. They basically show the camp in the disarray that it's in right now, and Camp Arawak, I believe it's called, is closed at the beginning of the film. And then they go to a flashback then from the present day of the camp being closed. The film starts off with a memory of Mom and a Dorer. And I don't know who that actually references, whose mother actually passed away. I never actually knew that, but that's what the film is in memory of, that person's mother.
Yeah.
And then it flashes back to actually the scene where the family's actually enjoying the camp, the whatnot, etc. This is really hard for me to talk about because I'm trying to place all the scenes in my head. It's a two-men couple. This is very racy for its time, which I approve its raciness, and two kids playing in the lake. If I'm not mistaken. So
no,
you have to
right.
correct me on that one. Unfortunately, some other kids in a ski boat are having a good time in the lake as well. Of course, a woman, or a girl, I should say, is kind of taking the attention away from the driver because she wants to give it a go as they pull a skier. It's a course of some jaunting flirting and stuff like that to get the control of the boat. I think she really wants to control some other joystick by the mannerisms she's giving. But the skier is desperately realizing what's going on and screaming about there's a boat that they're heading to, and they end up hitting the family, which is a man, girl, and a boy, and ends up her screaming innately about helping the family that just got hit, and they see one of the child's small life vests floating mangled in the ocean, or in the lake, I should say. Take it away, guys, because that was the worst intro ever to a podcast.
No, it's all right.
I've listened to a lot of podcasts. That's not nearly. I mean, that's like baseline, really.
Yeah, thanks.
I do have to, before we get more into it, I got to ask, Daniel, first off, have you ever seen this movie before?
No, I hadn't. So.
Okay, and had you ever heard of the twist ending? Like, did you go into this cold, or did you know?
I went. I'll admit that I went in cold. Mm-hmm. I got about a third of the way in, and I thought there was going to be a twist ending, and I Googled it because I watched it this morning, and I knew I wasn't going to have time to rewatch it to pick up stuff. So I did. I did Google it. I did not guess the twist ending that... I didn't guess the actual twist ending. I thought there was a very different twist ending that was going to happen. So I don't know if we want to spoil that for the listeners or not.
Well,
I don't think there's a way to discuss this film without just talking about the ending, really.
Yeah, anyone who doesn't want to be spoiled on a 30-year-old fucking movie with a twist ending, then they should just probably stop it right now, watch the movie, come back to the podcast, because we're going to fucking spoil it. Yeah. There you go. But yeah, it comes up to the present day at the time for Camp Arawak or whatever, and essentially they sort of give you the idea that one of the kids died, and they make you think it was the boy who died, and girl ends up, becoming adopted by her incredibly crazy fucking aunt.
Crazy fucking aunt.
Over the top crazy. Like I don't even know what they're going for with those scenes. Like
the epitome of delusional. Let's just say that. Oh yes, it is like that.
Well, she's pitched. I mean, the performance is pitched so towards camp, so towards this almost like John Waters movie kind of level of that. It starts to feel like parody very quickly, although it both is and isn't, I think. I don't know, it's a very weird place to start the film when you're just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be thinking about this character at this point.
Yeah. Very interesting.
I was going to say, though, although it makes you understand how fucked up this character gets, if that was what they had to deal with.
I think they at the right beginning of the film, you can kind of work it out if you try, but they don't really push it in your face that that's actually the way it is at the beginning of the film. There's a traumatizing incident, but then they play it pretty well at the beginning to hide it.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, to hide the kind of spoof they have.
Yeah,
my biggest thing on the beginning of the film, after that goes on and they actually attend camp, I have it written down here. I wrote some notes down. Do we really need to know how to spell out Meg?
Yeah. So essentially, the young girl's name is Angela. She comes to camp with her cousin Ricky, and Ricky is there to look out for her. She's almost basically comatose. Like, she doesn't say anything to anybody. She's very, very quiet. And of course, immediately that makes her a target to be picked on by everybody. So they're in the camp, and essentially they start off with this sort of red herring thing where they kind of make you think that Ricky must be the guy who's going to be committing the murders, because eventually some people start dying who have wronged Angela in some way. Essentially everyone's picking on her, and he's like, I'm going to fucking kill you. He just straight out says, I'm going to fucking kill you. I'm going to get you. I'm going to beat your ass. Shit like that. And we start out, the first kill, well, it's not really a kill. The first attack, I guess we could put it, is with the head chef. And what a fucking character.
Yeah, that's what I have right down here.
Who the fuck would hire this guy to camp? Like, how could you not tell this guy's a fucking pedophile?
I'll bet he works cheap, because that camp director was totally, he was just going by, I can make a ton of money off this camp, and that was his entire motivation for the entire film, really.
Yeah, it kind of goes together a little bit. You actually get to see a little bit of Mel, and I have in parentheses, worst camp owner ever.
Yeah.
And according to that one is perv cook, first incident, long screaming, well deserved.
Yeah.
Because of how much of a fucking perv he is, because they try to make Angela feel better. They take him to the cook, the kitchen. Why don't you get her ice cream, make her feel better, make her feel at home, get her used to this, and we'll take her back and get some ice cream. And he's like, basically, I got an ice cream cone for you. Why don't you look at this thing? And it's this and this. And then, of course, the cousin comes in to be like, what the hell's going on here? And then starts altercating the perv cook.
Yeah, there's no subtlety of this character. I mean, this guy's a straight-up pedophile. He jokes about it, like, when we first see the kids coming into the camp, he's just sort of staring at them, and he's like, "Ooh, yeah." And then the other black cook, I guess the second in command,
the driving Miss Daisy character.
Yeah, actually, who is, believe it or not, what's his name? Darth Vader. Darth Vader's voice.
James Earl Jones?
Yeah, that's his dad.
Oh, no shit.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's cool.
Yeah. He goes, they're too young for you, and he's like, no such thing. Where I come from, they call them baldies. Like, come on. Like, everyone knows this guy's a pedophile. Everyone at the camp knows this guy's a fucking pedophile. And when he takes Angela into the storage room or whatever, first thing he does is start taking his fucking belt off.
I got some ice cream cone for you here. I'm like, oh no, this isn't happening.
So
it is happening.
Yeah, so he immediately succumbs to a very grisly fate with a big boiling pot of water that they were supposed to put corn in. What did you guys think of those effects? I thought that was probably the best burn effects I've ever
was very
seen.
good, and if you look at their soft swelling and soft, very subtle.
Yeah,
but
they got bladder.
There is bladders in there swelling softly. And it's not like, in Howling when they were doing the change bladders, it was a very visceral effect, and they were actually blowing up by accident and stuff like that because it was so much of a pressure. These were very soft and subtle swellings going on. It was pretty good. And as I did say, long screaming because the scene is very, very long.
Yeah.
For what the effect is, the scene is extraordinarily long. Yeah. And there is a very tittering point of, like, please let me go. You're like, get me down here, you fuck, I'll kick your ass and stuff like that. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
And just these hands coming in on the stool, kind of interesting how just one hand would be enough to rattle the stool, enough to make him fall. But it was a pretty good scene. Probably the biggest pot I've ever seen in my life too.
What did you think of those that effects work for that, Dan?
I will say in general, I really liked the kills in this film. I like the fact that they're a little bit more expressionistic. And there's one towards the end that I'm going to talk about specifically in that, where you kind of get hints of things rather than like directly shown, where you don't have to. Savini's makeup effects, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, Savini's makeup effects are phenomenal, but it's also nice to see that some of these films are able to show things without going to that degree. I think both styles are wonderful. I'm not complaining about one or the other. But I really like the effects here. I liked the fact that we don't see his face at first. You see his hands. He's kind of like reaching up and grasping. And you hear him scream, you hear him in agony. I mean, in a way that what happens to him is worse than killing him.
Yeah.
Because he's just going to have third-degree burns, and it's going to be, agonizing.
Yeah, that kind
especially in the early '80s, before medical technology was not then what it is now, even. So and then you finally you kind of cut to his face. I liked the restraint. I liked the fact that it was it was effective. You got what you needed to see, but it isn't shoving your face in it. It's making you wait for the effect in a way, which I liked.
Yeah. So the movie essentially progresses where people start to die, and Mel starts to get the idea that maybe it's Ricky doing it because he's, being very aggressive towards people who are going after Angela. Angela, of course, is very quiet. There's two girls, especially, who are really going after her, which is Meg and Judy. Meg's one of the counselors. Judy's one of the fellow campers. They're both uber bitches. Like, they're both straight up the worst kind of fucking nasty human beings you can think of.
I actually have written down here, smack a bitch.
The only character's name that I remembered in this movie was Judy, and that was because at one point she wears a T-shirt with the word Judy on it.
Yeah, I remember Meg because it was spelled out to me.
I only remember because it's on her chest, so there we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
She made sure.
And they do make something of mentioning that she apparently blossomed since the last year of camp, where she no longer wants to talk to Ricky. She was apparently going steady with Ricky last year, but now she's got tits. So all the older guys are paying attention to her, so she no longer wants anything to do with these young guys who are so immature and stupid, right?
One thing about a sleepaway camp that you can definitely see more so than some of the other ones in the cult areas is there is actually a good amount of young campers. I mean, it's one of those ones that actually has a full array of actual campers. They're not trying to pander to the 20s and make them seem like they're teenagers. This film's actually pretty good.
Well, yeah, this feels like a real camp. Like, all these people feel like they are of the age that they're trying to present for the film. And it really feels like a real camp because they do have, just a big, basically, army of extras going on. Like, compared to Mad Men, where there's nobody.
Nobody, yeah.
Yeah,
and
here
even in the other burning is most of the time, you have late 20s pretending that they're campers.
But yeah, this really does feel like a real camp.
I'm just going to interrupt you briefly. You know how I know it felt like a real camp to me, and they actually felt like teenagers? It reminded me of my own, kind of adolescence, to my own period of being 12 and 13, and reminded me of being in the seventh layer of hell, of these social situations. I was watching it and going, I need to get the fuck away from these people right now. That I immediately had this very visceral impact of like this oppressive jock culture, and I'm like, no, I got to get away from
Well,
this.
if you're having panic attacks, you know it's good.
No,
No, yeah.
the killer I can deal with. The people playing
It's the
volleyball,
people I
like, no,
can't
I
stand.
stay away. I stay away from them.
Sociopath.
Yeah, it's weird too because there's not like necessarily like really pronounced sort of jock characters so much. The real antagonists are Meg and Judy. Like
No,
they're
it's
the real.
females. This is a very female-driven film. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're picking on Angela throughout the whole movie. They drive all the bad things that happen to Angela essentially, and then the consequences, of course, spring from that to other people. Yeah.
Judy, I mean, she is just a bitch, and, and then she freaks out, and then just screams at one of the counselors, and she smacks a bitch.
Yeah, the
And
counselor.
she's like devastated that she had to smack someone, but she basically had to smack her.
Yeah, and I like that moment too, because like the older counselor smacks her, and then she realizes, oh shit, she fucked up. She could be reported and fired for that kind of thing, So,
But that's the whole point, is the people like that need a smack, and that's why they're like that.
yeah. In general, like, what are both of your impressions of this film overall?
Oh, I just think it's really funny. Is most of these films that you see tits fest and stuff like that, and all you do is see naked guys running around the docks and stuff, and then at the end you see a big schwanger. And it's really sad that a 13-year-old girl's hung better than I am. It's just one of those things that you have to live. You have to live with. You have to learn how to deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
One thing I did notice is the first actual kill is the first sign that you actually get to see that it's actually a girl killer. The killer on the boat, when he pops up under the boat, you get to see the long hair of the girl.
Yeah. Well, the way they did it, they tried their best to like make it sort of inconspicuous. Ricky sort of has semi long hair on him, like he's got that sort of 70s, late 70s, early 80s kind of standard male haircut, right? So they try to hide it as well as possible. I think in the modern age with fucking Blu-ray and high definition shit like that, when you see like a half decent print on YouTube, it's kind of hard not to tell actually what's going on. Like on VHS, I think it would be a lot different because there's a scene where the killer comes in to kill Judy, which we will definitely get to talk about that scene for a few minutes, I think. He's supposed to be shadowed in the door. Like on VHS, it probably would have been a lot darker than it is, but it's a little bit too bright where you can kind of see, like, okay, that's a dude. It's a dude wearing a wig.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll go to you, Daniel. What are your like general impressions of the film overall, though?
I liked this film. It gave me a lot to think about, and that's always a point of pride for me. When I see a film and I go, actually, I would watch this again because it. In terms for me, I think about a lot of the gender issues and the kind of the sexual issues that are going on underneath the surface here, and culturally, I have a lot to say about that. If people want to talk about that, if not, that's fine. I think that I liked the pacing of it. Strangely, the kind of like you get these kind of like, oh, now we're just all kind of goofing around and playing volleyball and doing stupid camp activities. And then there's the kill that happens, and then like, oh, we go back to the kind of kill, ordinary, kill, ordinary pacing really worked for me in terms of kind of building this overall sense of impending dread. I will say that I thought the twist ending originally when I went to Google it was that the boy was going to be the killer, not the girl. I think we were supposed to assume it was Angela who was the killer. I thought that was kind of the immediate thought, and then the fact that you never saw her, although we really should call him Peter if we don't want to misgender him, but I mean he's really Peter. But I thought that the twist, quote unquote, was going to be that it was really the boy, the cousin, but it turned out to be a very different twist, which I thought was interesting. Although I think that some of the ways they get there are things I would talk about in more detail if there's interest in that. But I did like the film overall, and I think it's kind of fascinating and enjoyable and good.
I think it spices itself up with some comedy at times because right after the first death scene, you get to the one counselor going, "These peckerheads all suck," trying to clean up the mess and stuff. How the hell did that get there? And just all this kind of crazy stuff, him running around trying to clean up everything that they screwed up. And the one comical bee scene, I think it's a comical bee death because if you look at the end of the stall where the feet keep getting shown, obviously he can just lean down and just scoot right under the bottom of it, but yet he can't get out for some reason.
Yeah,
because the broom's in the way, things like that. Like, I find that very comical.
It's playing with some of these tropes, and it's giving you an out. I mean, it's kind of giving you both the kind of horror, the gore of it, although toned down considerably from what other films in the genre do. But at the same time, giving you some bits of humor, some bits of character, some bits of. I thought my favorite character in the film was really the owner of the camp.
That's the thing is that you were going to say about the first death, the first incident scene. You really get the sense of how much Mel is a piece of shit. Like, he is almost just as a piece of shit as the mayor from Jaws. That much of a piece of shit.
Yeah, he is.
It's great.
Totally, he's all about self-interest, self-preservation. He all he cares about is making money off this camp. He's like the worst possible guy as a camp owner, because he's obviously... He must be like, in the past, he must be like a used car salesman or something, and he just sort of lucked into owning this camp. Like, when the cook gets burned up, first thing he does is put his...
Let it go. Get out.
He's like, let's just sweep this under the rug, get this ambulance out of here before any of the kids see it, and pretend nothing happened.
Hey, we don't want to upset the kids now. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Hey, put Rodney Dangerfield in Mel's position. Hey,
He'll pay James Earl Jones' dad an extra $50 a week to keep tight-lipped and run the kitchen, and then all the I'm assuming Mexicans who are like there to clean the kitchen or whatever. You know, it's almost like this idiot asshole old white man, basically. You know, treating the coloreds. You know.
Well,
actually, I got a weird Italian vibe from him. It's weird, like almost.
He is totally the New York Jew. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's
exactly what I was gonna get that. I was trying to say that, but like trying to not say it offensively, but at the same time, yes. He was getting that kind of like, hey, just move it on, right? I gotta make some money here. Just hold on. We're good.
I mean, there is an element of the caricature, you know, of the I'm the New York Jew, and this is you know, I'm the rich Jewish guy, and I own this camp, and I'm gonna make as much money off of it as possible. You know, in other shoes, I would find that, you know, this kind of like, wow, that's kind of a weird, offensive stereotype, but. You know, you almost kind of forgive certain things.
But it's actually perfectly honest at the same time. Was this film? Where was this film shot? Was this filmed on Long Island?
I don't know where this was shot, actually.
Well, like every character, I mean, this is very like all these kids come from New York. I mean, this is
because you can hear the accents and everything.
These are rich Brooklyn kids. Like that's who these kids are. You know,
because the one film was filmed in Southampton. I'm trying to remember which one it was. It was either like Madman or The Burning or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. I've been to Southampton. I've actually been there. I just didn't know that was filmed there at the time. But this definitely has like a South, like Long Island.
Yeah, like, Long Island or Brooklyn or the Bronx or something. I mean, they're very clearly these. You know, it's such. I'd almost say stereotypes, but the fact that they probably just cast those people and then put them in the movie. You know, it's like almost like you can't blame it for like everybody kind of sounds like they're from, you know, just north of New Jersey, because they were, you know, like I mean,
if I made a film around here and cast everyone, would be like, well, that's kind of like very racistly indoctrinated Pennsylvania Dutch. No, actually, this is just all the people I had.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, this is just the way it is.
The thing about Mel I like is apparently being a above middle-aged camp owner. You know, that can kind of attract the ladies. You know, because Meg was all about trying to get with him, and he got on his best either lime green sort of jacket and his yellow pants, and he was looking around for her and stuff, and he was about to have a great night with her, and then oh no, she's dead. She's stabbed right down the back in the shower.
Yeah. See, he tried to get the Miami Vice pastel sport jacket look on, and didn't work out so much.
It's the leisure suit phenomenon, you know. I'm gonna throw on my loafers, my penny loafers, and my leisure suit, and the ladies will come and knock it.
They would just
that is what it was.
Come to the Casbah. But I will say the one of the special effects scenes of the movie is Mel, the arrow through the neck scene.
Oh yeah. Because Mel eventually he's just convinced
and
Rick
like
to kill her.
He doesn't just beat him up. He like gorilla stomps his ass. He's just like, Forearms.
He headlocks poor Ricky, drags him into the woods, and just beats the crap out of him.
Yeah, I mean, he's not punching. He's just gorilla stunt. It's like I'm watching Dawn of the Planet of the Apes all over again. He's going to town.
So let's talk about probably the most impressive death scene really in the film because of what it doesn't show but what it implies. We'll talk about Judy being killed in this.
Yes.
Yeah, that is the best death scene in the film, I think.
I have a very long and thought out quote that I have highlighted here about that scene.
Well, we'll throw that right in there, sir.
Hot clit. Yep, that's. You don't really need to say more than that to get a sense of how she dies with the curling iron. So. Yeah. At first, when I first got it, I figured, like a cruel, like cauterized vagina kind of aspect of the film. But then you see, like, it open up, and I'm like, oh, she's ducking her. That's rough.
It's really graphic, but it's not at the same time.
It's really. I mean, and that's the thing I loved about old films is they made shadows make you afraid. I mean, I hate to say that. I mean, I don't want to say it's cliche or anything like that, but this is what the film did. Yes, it's cheaper that way, but it's effective that way. She's getting smothered by the pillow. You play on the shadows. You get the sense of a pending doom, and then the curlers open, and then in they go, and I'm like, oh, that's rough. That's awesome, but it's rough.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Daniel?
I mean, I think it's just a brilliantly directed scene. Ditto everything that Paul just said, in the sense of I love to play the shadows on the wall. I think one of my favorite shots in the film is actually where her hands are reaching up and grasping. For me, that feels very German expressionism. And I think this film, again, when you can show restraint, you can actually play the horror for more. Because I think, especially, not as I view this from the outside to some degree, as not someone who follows the horror genre religiously the way you guys do. I get the sense that in a lot of cases, you go to these films looking for, oh, look at that great gore effect, look at that great, and that's fun. I love that too. But it's almost like when you have the great gore effects and you think of them just as effects, it almost distances you from the viscerality of it to some degree. And so by implying more than you're showing, it actually makes it more real in a sense, at least for a modern viewer. And I don't know, I've discussed on this podcast before my love for kind of black and white and that sort of thing. And this, like, that was a scene that was screaming to be black and white. I think, it was such like you could imagine that being in a film. It feels very Hitchcockian almost in that way, as does the kind of psychological realism of the motivations of the killer.
Yeah.
This feels very much like a companion piece to Psycho in certain ways to me.
Yeah, the implications that Judy, who is the most sexualized character in the film, gets punished for basically using her sexuality as both a weapon and, basically the spearhead of her antagonism towards people and how she manipulates people, and then she gets punished for it in the most brutally appropriate way, I guess.
Well, and if Peter is essentially, if we are implied that he is killing because he is going through puberty, but being in this kind of enforced gender role that isn't his own.
Yeah, well, Angela's actually been driven to think that she should be on that side too, and the one girl that Judy actually seems to facilitate towards is actually someone that actually was going towards Angela for a while too, and Angela seemed to reciprocate that.
Yeah, the friend of Ricky, the character who was interested in Angela, and for a while Angela actually showed the same interest back.
I mean, that's got to be a real just play on the brain there, just for about one character to be.
Yeah, that character, I actually recognize that actor. He is. Talking about the blonde kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the blonde kid. He was in the Manhattan Project. John Lithgow
really?
From a few years later. Yeah, that's a film that we should definitely discuss at some point on this podcast because it's a fun little nerdy, science geek movie, which I always love those. So, but yeah, he's the lead in that, and that's only from a couple of years later. I like him in the film, and I like the relationship, that kind of budding romance between them. My difficulty with this film in terms of kind of where it ends, where you end up, because there is such a history of people with kind of alternative sexualities being vilified in these kinds of films.
Ostracized.
Well, that the villain of like Silence of the Lambs is a man who wants to be a woman.
Yeah.
And that is oh, that's evil and wrong.
Yeah.
At the same time, these films were kind of the only way that people who were of these kind of alternative gender and sexual minorities got to see themselves on screen. But every time you saw yourself on screen, you were a villain.
You were also cutting people up.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so there is that kind of element to it. The way I judge these is would I take a trans man or a trans woman and sit them down and watch this film with them? And I think I would have a hard time. I mean, I would have to say, okay, this is what this film is, because I know some trans men for whom this would be incredibly traumatic to go through this experience of seeing this film. I don't have that experience, but I'm a cis man, so it doesn't really affect me at all. But that's kind of where I land on it. I kind of am very ambivalent about what this film is culturally today.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think that in '81 it was probably a little bit more straightforward.
I spent a lot of my teenage years wearing women's clothing, so I'm pretty okay with it.
Just a few facts on this one. So when they do the murder scenes, all they basically show you is, for the most part, is the killer's hands. So the guy who played Ricky, Jonathan Tierstein, was actually the stand-in for all those scenes. He was so you see a sort of a more manly kind of forearm hand, right?
Put a glove on it, and it says yellow.
Yeah. And he even donned a wig for that backlit shot where he goes and finds Judy, right? So it was him doing all that stuff. So it was a subtle way to try to fuck with the viewer's mind and confuse them. The budget for this was $350,000, so actually the same as Madman. And it made $11 million.
A little bit better than Madman.
Yeah, a little bit better.
Just a touch.
The final scene where we get the reveal that Angela is actually Peter, and you see the full frontal nude with his schlonger dangling in the wind there. This was actually accomplished using a nude man wearing a mask cast from Felicia Rose's face. Basically what they did is they got the dude drunk, so he'd stripped down. It was this college student. They got him drunk. It wasn't until 2014 that you actually get a fully uncensored version of this from Scream Factory. Until then, the VHS was pretty much the only way you could find it totally uncensored. Yeah. They only cut sort of minor things out of it, though. It wasn't any really big cuts or anything like that. The series creator, Robert Hiltzik, he apparently going to reboot this with basically a remake of this film, I think. This sort of seems to be the plans, which I'm not too fond of the idea.
I don't know how you do this in 2015.
They just did the Return to Sleepaway Camp with Felicia Rose. Felicia Rose returning as Angela. Yeah. I kind of, after I watched 2 and 3, I kind of got used to the Angela that they had.
Which was Pamela Springsteen, Bruce Springsteen's sister. Yeah.
Yeah, and Camp New Hope and Camp New Horizon or whatever, those, and her silly, very vigilant, you must be good or you will die, but she ends up killing everybody anyway if they're good or not. It's really kind of funny. Watching Felicia Rose again as Angela was kind of interesting. It wasn't as good as the first one, and I had to get used to the fact that, okay, now it's not her. Now it's not Pamela, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But it's a different character. When they did the sequels, honestly, as much as I like Sleepaway Camp 2, it's not the same characters. I don't consider it part of the same series.
Right. It's completely. It is very different. I mean, even the take on the character is different from Sleepaway 1 to 2 to 3. 2 and 3 are a whole different style of movie.
Yeah.
1 and 4.
So I'll go to you, Daniel, first. Your final thoughts on this film, and if you recommend it or not.
I definitely recommend it with the caveats that I kind of mentioned earlier. Obviously, be aware of what's in it. Although being aware of what's in it kind of ruins the effect of the ending. But I still think, I will actually probably rewatch this one. This is the first one of the series that I'm definitely I would rewatch this to gather some of those nuances that I missed before. I will say that the gay couple at the beginning, I missed the fact that there was a couple. I kind of, a lot of times when I put these movies on, I'm kind of, okay, sitting down, I'm kind of getting a cup of coffee, and I'm not paying super close attention to the opening shots, the credit sequences and stuff. So maybe there was a very clear shot that I missed. But then when they are in the loving embrace in the memory of Peter, I'm definitely these are two very straight men who do not know how to act gay at all. These do not look like gay men in the slightest. I don't know. I feel like I want to watch it again, and I would probably have more to say. But I would probably recommend this. I think this is pretty effective. Although I don't know how you can watch this by today's standards and not think of Wet Hot American Summer, the entire film.
Yeah, which was
the creators of Wet Hot American Summer basically like they credited this one as one of their influences. And I mean, there are even like my wife has been watching the TV show on Netflix that's come out now. And I mean, there were plot points in this film that seemed to be directly ripped off in that. With the girlfriend, like, oh, it's the next year, and oh, we dated last year, and then the girlfriend is, being snooty towards him and that sort of thing. I don't know.
I can go for the big jock now.
Right, or whatever. So it was definitely a, like, oh, this is where this came from. I get it. I think it's hard for a modern viewer maybe to see it for what it is, but.
No, that's cool. Paul, what are your final thoughts on this one?
Great film. It's great for the camp killer style. It definitely takes a new leave and a new approach to most of the other ones. You never find another film basically that in the 80s that fits this kind of mold the way it does. It definitely goes away from the standard. So it has a lot of psychological tricks, twists, emotional twists, and stuff that people, in the media now talk about more so than ever is gender identity, the idea of, psychosis and stuff forced upon by the media or parents or however you're supposed to live your life by what people think you're supposed to do, and how it can fuck people up, right? I mean, then you start getting, the one point that you people have missed that is the most prudent part of this whole film is at the end. It has the cop with the worst fake mustache I've ever seen. You forgot that. Very, very, very prudent part when he comes out from seeing Meg dead, and he comes out and he just has this camera is just fixed on this worst fake mustache in any film ever, and it's beautiful. and then you can see even the cop he's wearing a mask of what they think he should look like. See, we're all wearing masks, so let's be true to ourselves and put on some makeup and let's do the high shay. So let's do this. Let's go. Let's watch Sleepaway Camp in our favorite nightie with some Haagen-Dazs. That's what I'm gonna do right now. So
it actually sounds pretty comfortable.
I like it. I think it's good. Snuggly, Haagen-Dazsy. I like it.
All right.
Nightie in Scotch. That's the
Scotch, Haagen-Dazs, nightie, Lee. Snuggling up beside me. I like it.
Hey, sounds comfortable. Hey, this is Tom Six, director of the Human Centipede movies. I wish I was as good as David Cronenberg, but I'm fucking garbage. But at least I can drown my sorrows away by listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, a movie podcast. All right, we'll move on now to 1981's The Burning.
This summer, if you're planning to go camping, don't. If you're looking forward to midnight swims, don't.
Sneak on back to the campsite. Get some matches. Build us a hot fire. Don't be long.
And if you're thinking about being with someone where no one can see you, don't. Because this summer, A Legend of Terror isn't just a campfire story anymore.
They say he smashed his way through the bunk room door, just a mass of flames. Burned alive, cried out, "I will return! I will have my revenge!" He lives on whatever he can catch. Right now, he's out there, watching, waiting. Who's there?
What happened one summer 5 years ago is about to happen again, and again, and again. The Burning.
Directed by Tony Maylam, written by Harvey Weinstein, Tony Malin, Brad Gray, Peter Lawrence, and Bob Weinstein, and it's starring Brian Matthews, Lee Aries, Brian Backer, Larry Joshua, Jason Alexander, yes, that Jason Alexander, Ned Eisenberg, Carrick Glenn, Carolyn Houlihan, Fisher Stevens, yes, that Fisher Stevens, Lou David, and Holly Hunter, yes, that Holly Hunter. So there's actually quite a few sort of first-timers who actually went on to do quite a bit of stuff in this one.
Mm-hmm. This is the very first Miramax film, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's the very first Miramax film. This is what got the Weinstein started to their gigantic empire they own now.
I always like to say, horror started some of the biggest names in the industry.
Yeah. We were talking about last week, Madman, how Madman learned that this film was being made, which was also centered around the sort of Cropsey urban legend that sort of went up and down New York State. And they decided to slightly change Madman, sort of distance themselves from that. This film totally embraces the sort of Cropsey thing, outright calling their killer Cropsey in this film. This one involves a really horrible incident that happens years in the past. Some kids in a summer camp, Camp Blackfoot, I believe it's called.
Blackfoot, yes, correct.
Yeah, they pull a prank on Cropsey, who is this alcoholic groundskeeper of the camp, who apparently...
little deformed-looking...
Yeah, well, he's got that sort of pig nose going on there, but
a little weird slack jaw on him. So
yeah,
they like to make fun of him. They call him cruel and evil.
Yeah, apparently he picked on the kids and abused the kids, so they decided to get back at him. They pull this prank that goes horribly wrong because Cropsey lives essentially in a ticking time bomb of a fucking shed. Because when they put the camera going through, you see, here's all these gas cans and rags.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Kerosene lanterns hanging here.
These giant wool canvas blankets.
Yeah. What the fuck's gonna happen if you put a fucking flaming skull there with worms crawling out of it to scare the guy? He's gonna burn to death. And he does. He doesn't burn to death, but he burns up.
It's almost like it just happens that there's gasoline cans all over him and things like that. It's almost comical in a way. The beginning of the film, if you look at it in a cynical way.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he knocks the skull over, and then he's like, the bed gets set on fire or whatever, and he's like jumping out of bed, and then there's a kerosene canister there, and he just knocks it over. I literally laughed out loud at that moment.
Yes, exactly. Isn't it comical? It's
very like, okay, yeah, like, look, can we make this slightly less obvious that we're,
and it releases the giant tarantulas.
Irony had not been invented in 1983, apparently, but
And also, I will say this: one early fault of the film, although I really love this film, with spoilers, I really love this film. One of the early faults is the guy in the burn suit jumping out of the cabin. So fucking obvious he's in a burn suit. Like, his head is obviously covered with the hood or whatever. It's not, it's not the character's head. You can definitely see that. But anyway, it's an effective setup, all the same.
They wanted the stunt guy to live, so we understand.
Yeah, and so Cropsey rolls down a hill, and he falls into like a stream or whatever, and they take him to the hospital. They put the skin grafts to him. They don't take, and so he's apparently like in the hospital or a mental ward or something like that for like 5 years before they finally release him. And he's not too happy about his situation. He
Reagan era cutbacks in medical care. That's what happened,
Exactly.
Like, no, we're out,
If this was in Canada, he would be fine.
No, he would still be in the burn unit.
They actually use him as I guess they use him as a hazing ritual for the new candidates. They give him a hard time and make him go see Cropsey to toughen up the new guys. And when that
new guy was clearly like 40 years old.
Yeah, the new guy. Well, how new can you be? And I guess Cropsey just decides to wake up and scare the living crap out of the intern and the resident there. So that was pretty interesting. And I wasn't sure if at this point in time, Cropsey was released or Cropsey escaped. They really didn't compound on that.
No, he was released. The initial scene is like just a week after he got burned up.
Okay.
And then in the black orderly or whatever he is taking that new doctor, and you're right, Daniel. Yeah, new guy. Guy looks like he's like 50.
He looks like he's been a medical professional for years. And I mean, seriously, med students like dare each other with this shit. That's how you get through med school. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no way. Like, that was of all of the unrealistic shit in all of these movies, that was definitely the moment where I'm like, there's no way this doctor lets this orderly get the better of him in this situation. Like, that is completely unrealistic of this character. Took me right out of the movie there, because I'm like, no, this is horribly, horribly unrealistic. Immortal killer, burned over all of his skin, coming around, killing people, magically transporting around the woods. That I buy. A fully fledged doctor, like, not being able to go into a burn unit, no, that I do not believe for a second.
Yeah. So Cropsey does get released after 5 years. Hey, someone has been watching their Italian giallos, because he gets released in a dark trench coat and a black hat with gloves and everything.
Yep.
All
and goes the hooker.
And he immediately goes and finds himself a hooker and kills her.
It's a weird death scene.
Yeah, it is. That hooker, again, sort of a believability issue, and I can't believe I'm bringing this stuff up. It sounds like I'm shitting on the movie because I really like it, but, I mean, there's no way that hooker would take that guy. Even if she couldn't see his face, there's no way she would take that guy up there unless
it's
she
called
had
street smarts, and she didn't have it.
Unless she had a pimp backing her up, she would not be taking that guy up to her.
Also, looks. She didn't have it.
Yeah. Well, she's definitely... Well, I guess you could make a case that maybe she's an aging hooker, so maybe she had to take what she could get.
I'm taking Eddie John today. This is
Eddie John Thursday. This is the pre-Giuliani Times Square. I mean, you know.
Yeah. But anyway, she unfortunately takes him up to her apartment, and he stabs her with her shares and decides to keep those, I guess, or, you know, gets a motivation anyway for his murder weapon, and he's immediately heading towards summer camp. Mm-hmm. Camp Blackfoot was burnt to the ground, but there's another camp just up the river, so that's handy. And he immediately starts staking it out, and that basically takes us to our main characters. Actually, in this one, I think feels like a real summer camp as well. Like, there's just so many kids in it. Like, there's kids of all ages. You got your older kids, been there a couple years, and then you got all the new, like, younger kids and stuff as well. You meet this sort of cavalcade of characters, and although you don't get to know them super well, I found actually the acting in this film was, like, really engaging. Like, I liked everyone I saw.
Jason Alexander kid, he's going places.
Yeah,
he was really good in this.
You know, he would be a really whiny guy on a show one day. He'd be really good. Can't stand you. That's the one
that
thing
man's
I
gonna
did
play
say
a cartoon
is,
duck. Like,
yeah,
there's finally a mixture of campers, even though most are in their 20s.
I mean, I felt like most of them looked of age. Some of them, like the little red-headed girl, their Tiger or whatever her name was, like she looked like a 15, 16-year-old.
And I like Jason Alexander talking about the sweet meat. There's no problem with that.
Jason Alexander looked maybe 20 here, maybe at the most. Most of them looked like they were young to me. They looked like
I did like when I'm just gonna jump right ahead because I'm just gonna say when none of these characters are safe. You can't tell which one's gonna get killed and which one's not. I mean, the canoe raft scene, he screws everybody up, and it's a whole. There's a whole plethora of different types of characters and things on those rafts, and he just screws everyone up. This film is great. I just say that right now. I think it's great.
Yeah, well, the setup for the plot is essentially, okay, so you got Cropsey coming back to this camp, and what I really liked about how this started out is that for essentially the first hour, he doesn't kill anyone after he kills the hooker. Like, you spend, like, almost the first hour just getting to know all these characters.
Plot story, yeah.
Yeah, and you see Cropsey, he's definitely stalking around the camp, because they do the point-of-view shots with him, and I like how they rub Vaseline on the lens to make it look like his eyes are a little fucked up or whatever, right? But he's stalking around these people. You think he's going to kill certain characters here and there. They make it kind of realistic in the fact that Cropsey realizes that I can't start killing people here because there's too many fucking people, and I'm going to get found out. It's not until the older kids take a canoe trip up the lake to the old site where Camp Blackfoot used to be, where he finally gets the opportunity to start hunting them down because they're isolated from the rest of the camp at that point.
I was really happy when I first watched this movie, and I thought I would have another a Madman where like this like obviously worst hunk in the world was the man, you know what I mean? But then Glarus comes into the situation.
Glazer,
yeah. And he's supposed to be the kind of hunk, but he's a complete douchebag at the same time. But of course, then you have the head counselor, Todd. I think believe his name is Todd.
Something like
He's
that, yeah.
They're more of a hunk vibe, but like you have this really horned up, scrawny, kind of, I don't know, straggly guy that at first, and he wants all the one characters.
Oh yeah, Eddie there wants.
Eddie wants, and I'm like, oh, another one, okay, but and Eddie scares her, by the way.
They have this sort of bully character in Glazer. Then they have the guy he's bullying, who is Andy,
Alfred.
I guess, or Alfred. Yeah, Alfred.
Alfred.
Who is, he's sort of weird,
I
because
call him the resident spaz.
Yeah, because that's a good way to put it. Because he's doing the peep and Tom thing a little bit. He definitely likes to follow people around.
I like to hang out and just randomly follow people for no reason and get the shit beat out of me when I'm caught, but it's not my fault.
Okay, I'll go to you, Daniel. What are your sort of general impressions of the film?
I think this is really effective. Really enjoyed this. It was a fun watch. I did watch both of these kind of back to back this morning. I didn't have time to watch them at all this week, so I literally was just like, all right, I've got 4 hours and I've got 3 hours of movie to watch, so let's sit down and do it. I'm kind of one of those, so I'm sure I missed some details, unfortunately. I would also revisit this one at some point. Again, I really liked Jason Alexander in this. He was kind of the most fun thing that I enjoyed about it was that. The effects are amazing. Savini, again, there's just no question that Savini's the man. I know that's a controversial statement, but Savini, great gore effects. I really liked the fact that you do spend about half of this film not really in the kind of slasher mode, like straight up people wandering around getting killed. I like the fact that it's not until they do kind of go into this isolated thing, and then Cropsey kind of gets rid of the canoes and forces them to kind of fend for themselves. I really liked that element of it. Mm-hmm. In fact, I kind of wish that was more of the film. I kind of wish there was more of a sense of, like, isolated group of campers with no contact with the outside world, foraging for food or whatever, and being hunted down by this guy. I think that would be a fun sort of alternate take on this sort of idea. I definitely see that movie if
definitely, if you want to watch a movie like that, watch The Forest.
Okay, well, I'll write it down.
Yeah, watch The Forest.
I also really liked the beginning where he does go into the city. I really liked the element of that. I thought that would have been an alternate, like he goes and becomes a Jack the Ripper character and starts killing.
Yeah, that would be a great giallo. Absolutely.
I think that would be another fun thing. I don't know. It was a lot of fun to watch. It gave me kind of less to chew on, I think, than Sleepaway Camp, which, by the way, apparently on VHS, you guys probably already know this, it was also known as Nightmare Vacation, which I think is a much better title. Just to throw that in. Although that might have been confused with the National Lampoon's Vacations film.
There's Nightmare Weekend and a couple of different other films from the early 80s there, but I like The Burning. I think The Burning's pretty good. I love the look of Cropsey.
Although Tom Savini wasn't happy with that makeup. Apparently that was one of his least favorite ones he did.
Yeah, fuck him.
Well, yeah, if it makes you feel better, I hear he's kind of an ass on the convention circuit. So.
I've met him.
Have you? All right.
Yeah.
Like we said, there's a pretty likable cast. I think the acting's pretty good. The setups are pretty good for basically everything you see here. This was the film, of course, that launched the Weinstein brothers into stardom. This was their first Miramax film, and this got them. Even though this film was not successful, the budget was anywhere from $500,000 to $1.5 million, and $1.5 million seems to be the one most people settle on. It only made $707,000 apparently altogether, so it was a bit of a box office failure, but it still got them places. Apparently Harvey Weinstein wrote this before Friday the 13th was written.
Oh.
So apparently it predates that to some extent. This was one of the first films that landed on the UK's Video Nasties list, and it was heavily censored in the UK. This was a film that Tom Savini took when he basically turned down Friday the 13th Part 2 to do this one. Because at the time Savini made this big point of we're going to bring Jason back for Part 2. And he's like, no, Jason was never alive. He was dead by Part 1. You can't bring him back. He's dead, so I'm not going to do those movies. Of course, then he came back and did, like, Part 5 or 4 or 5 or whatever. So, he kind of hypocrited that.
5 is the worst because it wasn't Jason. It was just the guy using Jason's legend to kill.
Yeah.
The Video Nasty things in England was funny because Evil Dead 2 was on it for a while, but
Mhm.
the only thing they cut out was when Billy Bob kicked him in the face when he was on the ground. That's the only thing they edited out of the movie because you can't kick a man when he's down in England.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was a really weird cut for Evil Dead 2. Everything else was left in, but they cut that out. That's the weirdest edit I think I've ever heard.
So so this one was heavily edited though for the U.S. audience. It wasn't until MGM released it, sort of almost a bare bones release, but it was uncut. They cut so much from the raft scene. That was the big scene they cut from, and that's sort of the set piece of the film. Like that's the big major set piece.
And, that's definitely a climax.
Where Cropsey just kills like what, 5 or 6 kids all at once.
6 kids. That's where I have down Woodstock from Short Circuit. Can't program anything without fingers. Yep, because he gets his fingers strapped up. And everyone on that raft dies. And that's the thing is they have a cavalcade of different characters on there that normally you would see walk away. Even a young woman, very young girl, that kind of thing, they're all dead. You know what I mean? Like, he kills indiscriminately. Of course, how do you hide a guy that size with those pruning shears in a canoe when you see the canoe? You actually see inside the canoe, but yet he pops up out of nowhere. The other thing I have is actually, I have it quite quoted here, actually hidden with the dead girl under the pillow, under the sleeping bag. What the fuck? Because he has the Glazer has no idea he's laying right next to the girl until you see the shears, and then just automatically pops up without actually any movement and picks Glazer right up in the air in one stroke, and then puts him against the tree. Good scene, but I was like, really? Physics have nothing to do with this?
There are some suspension of disbelief issues with some of those scenes, but
if you get third-degree burns across all your body, you become a superhuman character. That's
what
what
happens. Well, obviously you don't feel anything anymore because your nerves are all dead. Either that or you feel everything.
Yeah, but I did want to mention Glazer, although he is kind of like the typical bully character, jock bully kind of character. It's interesting. Like there's actually more depth to that character than you would.
He reminded me of Dugan. Dugan.
Yeah, Dugan, exactly.
Yep. What are you giving me a hard time, Todd? He's the one looking at everybody. What the hell?
Because first off, he's a very ineffective bully. The only guy he manages to bully is
Alfred.
Yeah, is Alfred. Everyone else basically tells him to shut the fuck up and get away from him, right? And he basically relents to that. When he's with the girl he's interested in, and he's basically a 1-minute wonder in the sack. It's obviously he has insecurities, and he's like, okay, so I suppose you want to go back to the camp. And she's like, she actually likes him, and she's like, no, we can stay, and stuff like that. And you can actually see his sort of confidence regaining. And there's actually a little bit more depth to that character. It's like you can actually see why he's a bully, like he's so insecure. So I thought there were some nice little nuances to some of the characters in this film that you usually don't see in this sort of film.
Yeah. I mean, just like the basic of it, I have written down here, like Alfred, he's a spaz, but he's also a hero in the end. And then Todd, he's the hero, but he's also the cause of the whole fucking movie.
Yeah, because he's one of the original kids that got Cropsey the way he is.
One of the things I thought was really cool is that I think I have it written down here. I can't remember where the hell I wrote it down at, but the music after I think Alfred stabs Cropsey in the back, it has a giallo feel mixed with kind of like Dead.
Yeah, it's Rick Wakeman's score. You're right. Like that made me think giallo as well. Like just the way Cropsey's dressed in the opening scene where he kills the hooker and stuff. Like that's straight up giallo. Like I have to think they definitely saw some Italian films. And
it was very giallo mixed with almost a subtle Dawn of the Dead kind of song. Some of the songs in Dawn of the Dead mixed.
Yeah, well, it's got that electronic.
It's
European,
not Goblin, but it's something else.
Close to Goblin, like that sort of European electronic kind of score.
It's that prog rock thing.
Yeah. It's really well done. I'll just give my final thoughts on it. I think honestly, it's a straight up classic of the genre. I like this better than basically all the Friday the 13th except for the first one. I think this one is just it's hands down better than all the sequels, and it's better than a lot of the slasher films I've seen from that era. I think it's really an unsung kind of gem, and I think mostly that has to do with the fact that people did not get to see the real cut of this film, the uncut version, for so long that it just kind of got thrown into obscurity. Fortunately, now you can see the uncut version, and I think a lot of people are starting to gravitate towards it because it's actually really good. It's got great acting, it's got a great setup, and it's really effective, I think. Go to you, Daniel. What are your final thoughts on this one?
I would agree. I liked watching it. I'd watch it again. Again, not as much meat to chew on as I thought in Nightmare Vacation, which is what I'm just going to call it now. But, but really enjoyable. I can't say classic because I just haven't seen enough of them to know, but I mean, it certainly feels this very kind of classic feel. And some great characters, and a great start from Miramax. So there you go.
All right, Paul, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, definitely one of the tops for me. I really like the nuance of it. I like the basically the plot. There's actually good acting in this one. You don't have a true mix of campers like you in Sleepaway Camp, to get the sense of a real camp and stuff like that. And you don't get like the whole sense of the owner and whatnot exactly. But the actors that you do see, there's a lot of star class actors in here, as we mentioned prior, to people that have blossomed in the career later. But overall, I like the gore scenes. I like the killings. I like the backstory, and overall, I think it's probably one of the best camp killers films out there. Definitely one that slipped under the radar for many years for me. But I'm glad I got a chance to see it, and I own it now. I don't know which version I own, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But definitely a good scene. Definitely good.
Yeah, the versions you want to look for are definitely the old MGM release from the mid-2000s, or you can get Scream Factory now. They have the Blu-ray release, which is also uncut, and apparently, I mean, it's fucking Scream Factory, so it's going to be fucking good. I haven't seen it, but I mean, it's going to be fucking good.
I have to assume I have the MGM because I remember the lion in front of it roaring. So
yeah. I think I think the Scream Factory is the exact same print as the MGM. It's just that they've upgraded it to Blu-ray, but I think it's the exact same source. So because I think MGM just licensed it to them or whatever, right? So, but yeah, all right, great. Thank you very much, guys. Next week, just take a little business here. Next week, we're going to be looking at Just Before Dawn and Motel Hell. Those are the ones we're going to be getting into. So
both very polarizing films for if people like to watch them.
We're going to be doing those. Going to try to start doing some commentaries for the podcast. My brother and I are going to do sort of a dry trial run this Sunday with the minimal equipment I have right now. We're going to try to do a commentary on the 1990 version of Night of the Living Dead. See how that goes. Don't expect great things. It's just going to be a sort of a drunken fan commentary. Hopefully try to work some more of those into it as we go along. Some film commentaries, hopefully, and can set up a way to get Daniel and Paul into some of these as well. I don't know if it'll work over G+ or not. I think it's feasible, though, so we'll work out the logistics of that at some point. Yeah, so we'll go into you, Daniel. Would you like to plug your podcast, sir?
Sure, I do a podcast with my wife all about Doctor Who, if you're Doctor Who fans, which I don't think anybody listening to the podcast is, but if you are, go check it out. Our most recent episode I thought was really good. We discussed all of Series 8, the most recent season. Talked a lot about some abusive interpersonal relationships, which is great to get to talk about a family show. And Lee got mentioned on that episode. Lee, have you mentioned that? Have you listened to that episode yet?
I haven't listened to it yet. I was going to listen to it tomorrow at work. So.
Well, you are mentioned by name towards the end, and I think you'll appreciate your mention. So
the king of abusive relationships.
Yeah, this podcast, I'm the major abuser of this one.
Yeah, I know.
All right, that's awesome. Paul, tell us where we can find you on the interwebs.
Facebook, PA Brew News, 3 different words. And then on YouTube, PA Brew News, 1 word. You can see me talk about beers like 50/50 Eclipse and stuff like that. Other than that, if you want to hear some really shitty black metal from the U.S., you go to YouTube, Funeral Dust 666, 1 word. That's about it for me.
Right on. Okay, and of course you get the trailer at the end that will direct you to where you can find all these fine links to all these fine gentlemen's endeavors. And I think we'll probably go from something from The Burning. I think I think that Rick Wakeman score is pretty fucking good. So I'll pick something from that to go out with. And thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me, and thank you very much, people, for listening. And we will be back next week with some more films about tits and knives and slashing and all kinds of fun stuff like that.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For our other episodes, links to Daniel, Paul, and Lee's other stuff, and links to some great podcasts of similar interest, visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com. There you can leave us comments on the site or directly email us. We listen and respond to everything. Thank you. Drive through.